Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is our Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy. It's a timely interview. We're talking about the fact Louisiana is $1.6 billion in the red. He's going to talk about what he thinks the state needs to do to solve that problem. John Kennedy is also going to talk to us about possibly running for the United States Senate. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. If you have to hire a lawyer, and I hope you don't, but if you do, hire a lawyer that you like, that you trust, and who specializes in your area of need. In these days, with all the laws we have, lawyers for the most part now specialize. They specialize in contracts, defense, business, personal injury, all kinds of areas of the law. So when you interview with a lawyer, ask him, does he specialize in the area of your need? Has he tried the cases? Has he been successful? And of course, how does he charge you? Is his fee hourly? Is it a percentage of the case if he recovers? What exactly does he charge? So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is, if you have to hire a lawyer, hire one you like, you trust, and who specializes in your area of need.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show our State Treasurer for Louisiana, John Kennedy. John, it's so great to see you.
Good to see you, Locke. Thanks for having me.
I can't believe it's been as long as it's been, but it's a very timely interview because we got some serious business going on. What do we do about this whole Moody's talking about dropping down our credit rating?
Well, the state has a credit rating, just like you and I have a credit rating. When I go to the bank to borrow money to buy a car, for example, first thing the bank's going to do is look at my credit rating. And if my rating is bad, the bank won't loan me the money, or if it does, it'll charge me more in interest. Well, the state has a credit rating too. And it matters because I borrow hundreds of millions of dollars every year to build roads and to fix schools and to repair college campuses. The three rating agencies are taking a hard look at Louisiana because we're running a deficit.
And that means we're spending more money than we're taking in.
You got it. That's just
pretty simple.
Pretty simple. And we've done it for 7 years in a row. And we've balanced the budget by rating all our savings accounts.
I still can't believe that's happened. That's just incredible.
When you match non-recurring revenue with recurring expenses and you don't cut the expenses, you end up with what they call a structural deficit. Our new budget year begins July 1, and the legislature will meet this spring, and they're looking at a $1.6 billion deficit. Now, there's a way to fix it. It may take a couple legislative sessions, but if we don't fix it, the rating agencies are going to downgrade our credit, which is going to cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more in interest.
So I read that you literally had a conference call with this rating agency, Moody's,
yes,
along with, I think it was the chief of administration and some of the legislative leaders. And have they indicated that they're willing to lay off on dropping our credit rating, or do they tell us that kind of stuff?
We'll get an answer soon. We've had two conference calls, one with Standard & Poor's, one with Moody's.
So they're all three of them are saying this?
Yes, though I think we're okay with the third one, Fitch. The two biggest ones, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, S&P as we call them, I'm a little more concerned about. If we had more time, I would go to New York. I was up there this summer and visited with them, but of course since then the price of oil has dropped.
Right.
We've got a 50-50 chance. Basically what we're saying is, look, give us some time here. We know we have a problem. We know we're spending more than we take in. Give the legislature time to address this problem. Give us time to come up with a plan where we don't have to hurt LSU or Southern or Baton Rouge Community College. Don't just downgrade us. Now, if we don't succeed in the legislative session, then we say to the rating agencies, do what you got to do. But give us some time. And will they? I hope so. I think our legislature's engaged. They know we have a problem.
I've been hearing it from state senators for years.
I think the governor understands we have a problem, and we'll fix it. We've got to fix it.
So we got here because we're spending more money than we're taking in, and you said we rated funds. I know we also had the BP spill money and Katrina money, and the bottom line is those were one-time gets.
Yep. Yep.
And there's nothing like that looking on the horizon.
I'll give you an example. Let's suppose that my income's $70,000 and I'm spending $75,000 a year. And you say, well, how can you do that? Well, if I go into my son's college savings plan and take money out of that, I can keep going. When his savings fund is rated, I can go get a new credit card and get a cash advance. Now, sooner or later, they're going to cut me off on that credit card, so I go get a new credit card. You can only play these games so long until your day of reckoning comes.
And we're here.
And we're here. We're
here.
just like the same shape Greece is in, and Portugal, and the countries you read about in Europe.
John, how is it allowed for the funds to be rated like this? You had made the distinction earlier when we were talking that there's a constitutional way to protect the funds versus statutorily.
Well, look, the legislature ultimately, Locke, as you well know, it decides what our budget is. The governor is taking a lot of blame for the situation we're in now. He's the chief executive officer. I understand that. Frankly, some of the blame should be placed on the administration. But nobody put a gun to the head of the legislature and made them pass these budgets. But at this point, it's just really not productive to worry about blame. We are where we are. We need to fix it. We can't hurt LSU or Southern or Baton Rouge Community Colleges or our VOTEC schools anymore. The future of this state is education. We need to face our problems and fix them, and they can be fixed.
All right, so let's talk about it. They can be fixed, so how do we fix this?
Well, I'll give you a couple examples. I would concentrate on the spending side. I don't think we need to raise taxes.
That's a big deal. Please say that again and convince everybody.
Look, we don't need to raise taxes. Our income, we're going to have $25 billion worth of income next year. When Governor Blanco was governor, our income stream was only $19 billion. When Governor Foster was governor, our income stream was only $12 billion.
We've grown amazingly well.
And we haven't added any people over that period of time. We've got enough money. It's how we're spending it that is our problem. I'll give you some examples. We've got 19,000 consulting contracts. Some of them add value, some of them don't.
Interesting.
We've paid
19,000.
We've paid consultants to come in. This is a true contract with a California company to analyze how our kids play at recess. We have paid consultants to encourage people to wear their seatbelts, which is the law, by the way. We have spent money on speakers, bringing speakers in to speak to conferences. We probably spent, well, in 1 year, I know the Legislative Fiscal Office put out a report 2 years ago. In one particular year, we had $2.8 billion worth of consulting contracts. The point is, we don't need all of them.
It sure sounds like we don't need them.
We need to eliminate 10% by value, and the remaining consultants that we keep, the governor needs to write them a letter and saying, look, you know, we can't hurt education. You're going to give us a 5% discount here. We can save hundreds and hundreds and millions of dollars.
Tell me about the credit, because I was reading where you talked about the tax credit kind of world and how that needs to be changed. Explain that to the folks. We've got about a minute.
You always want to take a look at your tax system. Now, I don't want to see us start with our tax system. I want us to concentrate on spending. But we don't need tax reform as much as we need tax fairness. And when I say fairness, the fairest tax system is one that has the broadest possible base and the lowest rate. That means that everybody has their fair share, pays their fair share. And if you get everybody with some skin in the game, you can lower the rate. We have too many exemptions and exclusions that are giving people favorable treatment, and we need to look at them.
Interesting. So we're basically saying some of you folks who hadn't been paying very much, you're going to start paying. We'll be right back. This is Locke Meredith with the Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid and court costs. So my legal lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith. Make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show the Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy. John, let's dive right back in.
Okay.
You mentioned oil prices, and we know they've dropped up, some say 50% or more. And that obviously has hurt Louisiana. Explain to the folks kind of the consequences and what you view to be the outcome.
In September, oil was selling for $105 a barrel. Today, it's right around 50 to 55. That's a double-edged sword, Locke, from Louisiana.
Interesting.
In some ways, it helps us. We're paying less at the pump for gasoline. If these prices for oil stay down for a year, the average family in Louisiana will get a little $800 or $900 tax cut from lower gasoline prices. The lower gasoline prices will help our tourism industry. A lot of people will drive in to New Orleans and Baton Rouge from Texas and Alabama and Mississippi.
I guess the industrial manufacturers and those guys that use fuels save money too.
Yep, there's a positive there, but there's also a potential negative. We are the nation's fourth largest energy producer. About a third to 40% of our economy is related directly or indirectly to oil and gas and petrochemical. So if the price stays down and drilling is curtailed, it could affect our unemployment rate.
So what
make it go up, and that would affect our personal income tax.
What's your estimate? We've heard, we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
There's this length of time ranging from 2 years to forever. What do you have any feel
We
for?
don't know. What's driving the drop in the price of oil? Two things. Number one, the Saudis are trying to discourage America from becoming energy independent by letting the price drop. That makes it uneconomical for some of our shale producers to drill wells. I don't think the Saudis will win this fight because they're losing money like we are, but they're trying.
I don't want them to win the fight.
I don't want
us to be energy independent.
We made great strides in this country in terms of energy independence. In 2004, we imported, probably 10 million barrels of oil a day. Today, we've cut that in half. We still have to import some oil, but we're producing more and more.
It's remarkable. Absolutely
it is remarkable.
Amazing, the technology.
The other thing driving the drop in the price of oil is because the world economy has slowed. The American economy is doing much better, but Europe is having serious problems. They're almost, they've got deflation. They're flirting with a new recession. Japan's in trouble.
Right. The
growth in China has slowed.
Down.
So when the world economy slowed, even though our economy is doing better, there's a lower demand, less demand for oil, and that causes the price to drop. How long will it stay down? Gosh, you have no idea, but we're prepared for the worst. Again, it's a double-edged sword. Don't misunderstand me. The drop in the price is if it stays down for a long time, it's going to hurt us. A lot of our people earn their living from the oil and gas industry, and we're very good at it. But there is a little added benefit, a lot of added benefit to this cheaper gasoline, and that's going to help
the person. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit. You wear kind of, in my head, three major hats or perform three major roles. The first, as the state treasurer, is kind of the CFO, the chief financial officer / banker for the entire state. Explain to folks what that role has you do.
Good question. I am the state's banker under the law. What does that mean? That means that I handle all of the state's accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts. That sounds simple, and in concept it is, but we've got a lot of accounts.
I was looking at the number of checks that go out.
I work very closely with the Department of Revenue, which is a separate agency, but they get the money in, and my job is to make sure that the bills get paid and it's dispersed. I'm also in charge of the Bond Commission, which has to approve all state debt and all local debt. If a city wants to borrow money, they've
Sure.
got to come to us and get permission, and we make sure they can pay it back, make sure the borrowing's for a lawful purpose, make sure they're not paying too much in interest. I also have a section dealing with unclaimed property where we return people's money. I'm very proud of our program.
Millions and millions.
We've returned over $300 million to the people in Louisiana. And I'm
Just
very
regular
proud of
old
that.
folks who don't know they got
Yep.
money sitting in an
Yep.
account somewhere. It's a nice role to play.
I spend a lot of time working with the legislature, particularly during a legislative session, helping them figure things out financially. And I sit on
All
over
kinds
30
of
boards and commissions. Now, obviously, I can't sit on all of them. My staff helps me, but I sit on the Louisiana Housing Corporation, for example. I sit on the Retirement System boards. I sit on Citizens Property Insurance Corporation board. So I've got plenty to do, but I enjoy it. I like doing it. It's a
Well,
lot of
you've been
fun.
doing it for coming up on what, 16 years?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm in my fourth term. It seems like
Unopposed
yesterday.
the last 3 times that you
Yeah.
ran. It's
Yep.
an amazing story. Tell the folks, we were talking, you are investing at times up to $10 billion.
Yep.
How is that decision made, and what are the criteria?
I have a great investment team, a 5-person investment team headed by the state's chief investment officer. We invest long-term and short-term. We have some trust funds or savings accounts protected by the Constitution. The one is called the Louisiana Educational Quality Trust Fund. And it's the Riley, LEQTF we call it, named after Kevin Riley Sr., who helped set it up, God rest his soul.
From Lamar.
From Lamar. Kevin was a great businessman, but also political and civic leader in Louisiana. I miss him every day. But we invest the money there long term in stocks and in fixed income instruments. Short term, we never let cash sit idle. When
Right.
money comes in, it may be going out the next day, but we don't let it just sit there even for a day.
It's valuable.
We will invest it overnight in short-term instruments, very liquid corporate bonds, what we call repurchase agreements. By doing that, sometimes we're only invested for, 20 minutes. But,
It's remarkable.
But we generate over $200 million in interest earnings because we have such a huge cash flow.
Well, and let's talk about the fact that you literally save millions and millions and millions of dollars when interest rates drop by
Yep.
refinancing that debt.
We have to borrow money, as we mentioned earlier, to build roads and to build things, maintain our university buildings. We pay interest on the money. When interest rates fall, we're very quick to refinance. We call it a refunding, but it's a refinancing like you and I just might just have refinanced our mortgages. We save hundreds of millions of dollars that way.
And I saw that you actually had done that, generating $29 million to be used potentially deal with what we're dealing with
Yep.
with the
Higher
legislature.
education.
We'll continue this on the next segment. This is Louisiana State Treasurer John Kennedy. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured and you have lost wages because of that injury, Louisiana law gives you a claim for that loss. Typically, it's going to require medical evidence from a medical doctor stating because of your injuries, you can't work. It's a pretty simple claim. If you had a job before the injury, doc says you can't work from the date of the accident, and 3 months later he says you can work, you can figure out what you've lost in wages. Circumstances occur, however, when the injury results in permanent physical and functional limitations. Now you can't do the job, according to the doctor, that you could do before the accident. So the question becomes, is there any work you can do, and what is the difference in wages? But the court doesn't just look at what you earned in the past, it also looks at your earning capacity. That is your ability to earn wages in the future, promotions, additional education. So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is make sure you know your rights when you're presenting that lost wage claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show our Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy. John, let's shift gears a little bit, a lot of it really. You're considering running for the United States Senate. Tell folks why.
Well, that's a little ways off. We have state elections first. I haven't made any decision about the state elections. I may run for re-election. I've been asked to consider some other spots. I don't know who our next governor is going to be, Locke. If we do have a Senate vacancy in the future, it's something I'd be interested in. I would. We've got a lot of. We have problems in Louisiana, but our problems pale in comparison to the problems they're having in Washington, D.C.
Amen.
I've been in politics and government a long time. I came in 1988 with Governor Romer. I've worked for Governor Foster. I've been treasurer for 4 terms. I've seen the good and the bad. I do it because I like it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. I also, what I especially like, not every day and not every week, but every now and then, you can go home at night and you can feel good about what you've done. You hit it a good lick and maybe improve things for the better just a little bit.
Right.
I wish I could say that happens every day, but it doesn't in government. It's an incremental thing. It's
Turning the Titanic a little bit.
Yeah, it is. But I enjoy doing it, and I'd like to stay in it for a little while longer. I miss practicing law. I got to tell you, I enjoyed the intellectual challenge of practicing law. I made a little better living practicing law than I do working for government, but
it's a sacrifice, and most folks don't really.
But the worst thing to me, and at least in terms of the working world, the worst situation you can be in is to have a job you hate. And I've had one of those jobs way long time ago when I was younger that I just hated. And it's important to do what you like. If you do what you enjoy, you'll become good at it, and the money will take care of itself. And I teach out at LSU Law School in the spring, and that's what I tell my students. I said, look, find a niche in practicing law or being a judge or getting in politics. Do something you like.
Right.
Don't worry about the money. Do something you like, and the money will come. And they say, well, how do you know when you have a good fit? I tell them it's real easy. If you get up in the morning and you don't want to go to work, you're in the wrong job. I'm not talking about if you're sick. If you just get up and say, God, I hate going in there today, you're in the wrong job. You need to think about doing something else.
Tell folks, you have an incredible background. You're pretty much a Louisiana fella all the way through, but your credentials, your education is remarkable.
Well, thank you.
Tell the folks about your educational background.
Well, I was raised in Zachary, happiest days of my life. In high school, I went to Zachary High School. I cared about 2 things: basketball and cheerleaders. I was no good at either one, Locke, but I enjoyed trying. I went away to college. I finished at Vanderbilt.
But you also graduated magna cum laude.
Yeah.
President of the.
I studied a lot at Vanderbilt. I had to. You got to keep up. I went to law school. I took a year off and worked for a bank for a year. Then I went to law school at the University of Virginia.
One of the top law schools in the nation.
It's a good law school. Don't know if I could get in today. I clerked for a federal judge for a while, and then I had a chance. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a chance to do another law degree at Oxford in England. So I was young and single, and it didn't cost me much to live. I had it down pretty low cost of living. So I just headed to England, and I did a law degree there.
And also graduated with very high honors. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, bottom line is, and I know you'd never say it, but you're a genius.
Well,
and you have degrees in economics and political science and philosophy and law.
That's kind of.
And it's remarkable. And so you're quite an asset to the state of Louisiana. And I personally, on behalf of all residents, want to thank you for your service.
That's very kind of you.
Tell the folks, you've said it. We as a country have a lot of issues, face a lot of issues right now. We were talking about the effect of the economy, the world economy on the U.S. economy and the U.S. economy. One thing I hear a lot about is, the feds, they've increased a lot of the cash that's out there in the world, maybe 300%. They're talking about maybe raising interest rates. How do you view all that with your expertise?
It can be dangerous. Depends on how the Federal Reserve deals with it. Without getting too technical, basically what the Federal Reserve did as we were in a recession, a deep recession in 2008, they flooded the economy with extra money. Now they did that through something called quantitative easing,
right.
But we won't go into.
We hear it called QE.
QE, and they did a QE1 and a QE2, but basically they printed money and flooded the economy with it. I think it did help us come out of the recession. But at some point, they're going to have to suck that money out. If they don't, then we will have inflation. Now, we're nowhere near the dangerous inflation levels in America, But unless you just throw out all principles of economics, at some point they're going to have, they meaning the Federal Reserve, is going to have to contract that money supply.
John, isn't it true though that the formula that they're using now to calculate inflation is so much different than that was used, say, in the Jimmy Carter days? They pulled out energy, they pulled out food and stuff, and if you count that, we really do have some. Yes, we do,
and I don't like the way the Federal Reserve and the Feds do inflation. I think it underestimates inflation. We haven't, according to them, we haven't had inflation even close to 2% for years and years and years.
Right.
That's not the experience of most Louisianians.
That's exactly right.
I mean, I know my insurance has gone up, for one thing. Same thing with the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate's very misleading because it doesn't really count people who've given up looking for work.
Just after 30 days.
That's right. And it doesn't count people who may have a job, but they only work part-time, or they had to take a job that wasn't as good as the job that they were laid off from. So that's all very misleading.
So we're struggling.
We are struggling. The federal, Congress, the way they handle money in Washington, D.C., it's sooner or later it's going to cause us a serious problem. They don't have a balanced budget. You've got to have a balanced budget. They borrow money to keep operating. And if you want to see what will happen to America 10 years from now, unless we fix that, all you have to do is look at Europe today.
That's right.
That's why Greece is in trouble, Portugal, Spain, I mean virtually all of the southern European countries. And they spent more than they took in. They borrowed money to fill the hole. The debt came due. They can't pay it back. And
it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare.
And we've been spending basically $1 trillion more per year than we're taking in revenues. And we have this outstanding debt of doing that so much that we have, what, 18 trillion? And that's not even counting probably the hundreds of trillions in unfunded. How do we fix that?
Well, you've got to, it's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. The first thing you've got to do is recognize you have a problem. And I think there are too many people in Washington, D.C. that don't think we have a problem. The other point, and you made a very, very, very salient point, we have debt. This is real debt. They have printed extra money. That's been part of the problem. But we also have borrowed money through what we call treasury bills, treasury notes, treasury bonds. China owns a lot of our debt.
That's right.
If China called our debt tomorrow, they could cripple us economically. So a lot of this money has to be paid back. There's not all of it. Some of it was just printed money, but some of it is real debt. And there are only two rules. Don't spend more than you take in, and when you do spend money, spend it on stuff you need, not things you just want. America, the Congress has been, and the President have been violating that rule for some time.
John, thank you so much for
Locke,
being on the show.
Thank you, man.
We
Always
really
a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. This is Locke with Legal Lines, our Louisiana State Treasurer, John Kennedy, who's pondering running for the United States Senate. Thank you for being with us.